Dear Gen Z, and Millennials too. First of all, I apologize for lumping the two of you together. I know full well that Gen Z, meaning those 65 million Americans born between 1997 and 2012, would not want to be caught dead being lumped together with, I believe the word is chuggy elders, the 72 million American millennials born roughly between 1981 and 1996. I understand that chuggy in Gen Z speak means out of step and trying too hard to sound like someone they aren't, which is precisely what I'm doing right now. But also what I thought about my elders till I started reading about all the heroic things they did in World War II. I really came to admire and love them in the end. But when I was young, I thought they were chuggy too, only I called them square and fuddy-duddy. So as a proud, late-blooming boomer, representing about 71 million Americans born between 1946 and 1964. Yes, we've just been passed numerically by the Millennials, and I don't think we're gonna catch up. I think it's time for a heart-to-heart. And yes, I know I'm leaving Gen Z out of this right now, but between you and me, when your claim to fame is grunge music and Alex P. Keaton, I mean, really, nothing happened during Gen X. But in all fairness, for the purpose of this conversation, Gen X and boomers can sort of be lumped together too. You know, once I'm done, I think it'd really be a good idea just to lump us all together. So let's put the stereotypes aside. Let's put all that aside. We've got to talk. Not as representatives of generations, but as fellow human beings and fellow Jews. So you may have heard that I've now got 7 high holiday sermons left before I move on to whatever comes next. I hear rabbis go to this farm where all they do is sit around all day, study Torah, and eat knishes. But wherever I'm going to be, just know that I'll always be around for you, my millennial and Gen Zers. As they say, your childhood rabbi is your rabbi for life. I'm not sure who said that. I think I made it up. But that's why we need to talk now. No time to waste. I know how hard it is to be a young Jew in America right now. 3/4 of Americans feel that we're going in the wrong direction. Freedom and democracy are declining dramatically almost everywhere we look. Women have lost the basic human right to control their own bodies, and the planet may be uninhabitable in another generation or so. Good luck. All of that has led inevitably to the highest rates of anti-Semitism in this country since the 1930s, because it's one of history's most sure bets that when the going gets tough, the tough and everyone else blames the Jews. A rabbi and his congregants were taken hostage by a gunman in Texas in January. This year. Last year was the highest year on record for anti-Semitic incidents in the US, according to the ADL. It's scary to be a Jew these days. It's scary to be a supporter of Israel. And to top it off, at the time we most need to come together in unity, Israelis and American Jews seem to be like Mars and Venus, going in opposite directions, politically, culturally, and religiously. And within American Jewry, it's almost as polarized. It's enough to make us want to throw up our hands and walk away. Why would anyone want to be part of this not-so-exclusive club called the Jewish people? So I'm here today, and virally on video, hopefully, to tell you why. It is special. It is a gift to be a Jew. And we should declare it to the world and to ourselves just how special it is and how proud we are. But I look out, and I know most of the kids here, kids meaning anyone under 50, and I know how great it was for you when you were here, and how great you felt when you left here. You were on top of the world, literally. I mean, you all got to climb Mount Sinai at your bar and bat mitzvahs, but I know how different it is for you out there now. There has been, surveys show, a dramatic decline in Gen Z Jewish connections, but also in Gen Z in general, not just Jews. The largest religious grouping is the group called the Nones, N-O-N-E-S, those who have no religion or profess no connection and affiliation. I also know that some nice things, wonderful things are happening with our younger cohorts. For one thing, you've taught your elders how to be colorblind and non-binary and how to be radically welcoming, and you are fearless too. In 2019, one of our incredible young adults, Nathaniel Harrison, gave a bar mitzvah talk describing the courage it took for his very diverse youth hockey team to ward off racism and anti-Semitism directed toward him and his teammates. He was already part of a minority, a Jewish hockey player. But as a Jew of color, Nate experienced hate from all directions, and he's helped me to see the world through his eyes. Well, this summer, Nate took part in the 21st Maccabiyah in Israel, and I know it was a thrill for him, and I know we had other Bethel kids there too. Kids, huh? Young adults like Adam Satz. Nathaniel's team won a silver medal in hockey, and he had no problem entrusting his prize to his rabbi for today. I have to give it back. It's classified, you know. Anyway, this is an amazing thing. Nate, Nathaniel, Mary, just ask my permission anyway. I had to put it on. Just. I've never worn one of these. I got like a participation trophy in Little League, basically. That's been it. So I got to wear a Maccabiyah medal. It's an amazing symbol of our connection that our congregation has to Israel and the Jewish people. This is the new Jew that Herzl envisioned, a Jew who's taken off the shackles of the shtetl, and returned to the land, to athletics, and to proudly defending ourselves, and to revel in our diversity, and to teach the world all about diversity, and to teach the world all about pride in who we are. While preparing a recent CNN special on anti-Semitism that I hope you saw, Dana Bash discussed her apprehension when her preteen son asked if he could wear a Star of David necklace in public. And it came up in a conversation with Deborah Lipstadt, one of the great Jews on this planet, when she talked about how she wears it. And she, of course, runs the governmental anti-Semitism office anyway, against anti-Semitism, not for it. And she wears a Jewish star every day. And so Bash was wondering and talked about how her son wanted to wear one, and she was very apprehensive. And made her nervous, she said, because I know that anti-Semitism is on the rise in America. But then, after working on that special, she concluded it turns out that normalizing the practice of and pride in Judaism is one of the antidotes to prejudice, something that my young son understood innately. And that's the kind of pride we all need to show. It's not always easy, but you, my Gen Zers, and millennials, you have it in your DNA. You are amazingly courageous. And that's what I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for. You know that your rabbi accepts you unconditionally, no matter what you believe, who you marry, if you marry, what pronouns you use, how you pray, and what you eat, or even which baseball team you follow. But if you are ashamed to be a Jew, that hurts. That one's on me. So we need to talk about being a proud Jew and a proud Zionist. And this is too important to get caught up in the generational stuff and all the other schmutz. All the confusion that gets in the way, the mixed feelings, the ambivalence that so many Jews have. So let's get started with the basic question that I'm so often asked. Why bother with this Jewish thing? What does it mean to be Jewish? I've spent my life, better part of it at least, looking for that magical answer that would tie together the strands, all the strands of the Jewish experience to answer that question, sort of a unified string theory with tzitzis. And that journey took me several years ago, ironically, to the words of someone not himself Jewish, Bill Clinton. Several years ago, as he began a worldwide book tour, the former president sat down with Dan Rather on 60 Minutes, and it was the most enduring, gripping moment of that interview. Rather asked Clinton why he did what he did in his reckless relationship that led to his impeachment. And the former president's response was telling. Why did he do it? He said, because I could. He then added that this is the worst possible reason. He said, I think that's just about the most morally indefensible reason that anybody could have for doing anything, and that is true. He did it because he could. Now, I don't want to single out Clinton as the only one who has abused power, the only one who has abused power and gotten impeached. But this is a theme that runs through our society. People with power exercising it arbitrarily simply for the sake of reveling in that power. Vladimir Putin is a much better example. I talked about him a lot yesterday. His genocidal crimes against Ukraine are only beginning to be documented. But you don't have to be a dictator or run a big country in order to become a super empowered sociopathic mass murderer these days. All you need is a car, enough gas to drive 300 miles from Binghamton to Buffalo, a social media account, a Bushmaster XM15, easy to get one of those, and a manifesto loaded with the trifecta of hate: racism, white supremacism, and anti-Semitism. And you head to the Tops grocery store to kill 10 black people because you can. In the 19th century, Lord Acton wrote, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." But that's not what Judaism says. Judaism says power ennobles, but only if that power is used to ennoble others. Power is a gift, our tradition teaches, but only if we use it wisely. And with the advent of Zionism, Jews have made the conscious choice of power and morality over victimhood and self-pity. To be a Jew is to ennoble the world because we can, to feed the hungry because we can, to assist victims who are half a world away because we can. We may or may not be a chosen people, but we are, in the words of Michael Medved, a choosing people. To be Jewish is an act of will. We exercise our will, not arbitrarily. To be Jewish is to choose the hard way, to dream the impossible, and then to fulfill it. We are the ones who tackle racism and hate head on. While other faiths spent most of the Middle Ages building fences and redrawing borders, Jews were constantly traversing them, carrying the best that every culture could offer. We traveled the world spreading a message of peace and justice not because we could, because we had to. We kept getting kicked out of every darn country. And then we built a Jewish state because no one would take us in. No one, including this place, land that I love. Thank God the Jews of Russia and Ukraine have a Jewish state to go to right now, and thousands are going. This month we mark the 125th anniversary of the first Zionist Congress, forged by Theodor Herzl, the giant who dreamed the dream of a Jewish state and then willed it into reality. But his dream began with a nightmare as he attended the infamous Dreyfus trial in Paris and realized that European Jewry was in deep trouble, and he was right. A half-century later, 2/3 of Europe's Jews would be murdered. But only 3 years after that, his dream of a Jewish state was fulfilled. So one reason why the world needs proud Jews, it's because our tradition believes that power can be ennobling. We also believe that power can be humbling, and humility itself can be ennobling. I'll tell you what I mean by sharing the story of a very special Israeli song. This song is a favorite of none other than Nancy Pelosi, who's mentioned it twice over the past couple of years at crucial times, as you'll soon see. But first, at great risk, because this is one thing people do not like to hear their elders saying, a little about me when I was your age. A story within the story of the song. I came of age at a time when Israel's existence could never be taken for granted. The weeks prior to the 1967 war felt like the potential lead-up to another Holocaust. And in the early days of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Israel nearly lost everything. But all that changed with the invasion of Lebanon in June of 1982. It was Israel's first war of choice. Suddenly, Israel was no longer David, but Goliath. And I was in Jerusalem when that war broke out, finishing my first year of marriage, last year, next to last, of rabbinical school. And those final few days before we left, I got to experience what it was like to be in Israel during wartime. And it was scary and sobering. The sirens sounded even though the missiles, the Palestinian missiles, could not reach Jerusalem at that time. But everything came to a halt. Everyone was in army uniform. Everyone was a reserve in some ways, a reservist. They were all catching rides to their bases. When Israel is at war, the whole country is at war. Now, because we had been scheduled to leave, we left just a few days into that war. And it appeared at that time that Israel was just going to go 40 miles into Lebanon to establish a buffer zone so that the PLO would not be able to reach the Galilee with their Katyusha rockets. And the terror would stop, they'd negotiate some kind of ceasefire, and that would be it. But that wasn't it. But that's how we felt in supporting Israel. We felt that all Israel could ever do would be to defend its fragile self. And that was the Israel that was stamped in my soul, the precious jewel, so fragile, so filled with life and spirit, so desirous of peace and tired of being attacked. But the day I was scheduled to leave, the army reached that 40-mile mark. That was the objective of Operation Peace for Galilee. I was just 24 and a half years old. I was you. I was impressionable, but not chuggy. And that was the day that Ariel Sharon decided to keep going to Beirut. That was the day they opted for regime change. A great military success became overnight a moral and strategic catastrophe, and Israel has been paying the price ever since. It was a huge mistake, one that led to the cataclysm of Sabra and Shatila, where hundreds of refugees were massacred, not by Israeli soldiers, but on our watch, and ultimately led to the vacuum that led to Hezbollah being on Israel's border right now. Menachem Begin, who had achieved peace with Egypt, left office in shame after Lebanon, a broken man. So traveling through Europe that summer on a Ural pass, everywhere I went, there were anti-Israel protests, some of them quite intimidating and violent. I couldn't understand how this could happen so soon after the Holocaust, and this was relatively soon. How people could embrace a group that espoused terrorism, that indiscriminately, only recently murdered school children in Ma'alot and the Olympic athletes in Munich. But there I was in Germany, and they were taking to the streets to deny my people one little plot of land, the only plot that we have ever called home. How? Amos Oz, in A Tale of Love and Darkness, writes, "When my father was a young man in Vilna, every wall in Europe said, 'Jews go home to Palestine.' 50 years later, when he went back to Europe for a visit, the walls all screamed, 'Jews, get out of Palestine.'" And that's exactly how I felt in the summer of 1982. And I know it's not the same thing that you experience, but it still goes on. It's morphed like a virus into different forms. This unrelenting disdain for the other, this hate that is, for lack of a better term, one might call intersectional. So the guy who kills blacks in Buffalo and writes about that also writes about hating the Jews. And the ones who attack Latinos in El Paso and Muslims in Christchurch and Heather Heyer in Charlottesville, they hate us too. Some promote racist concepts like replacement theory and eugenics to target us. Some demonize George Soros. When they do that, it's anti-Semitism. Some deny the Holocaust. Some aim their weapons directly at us. In Jewish population hubs like Highland Park, Squirrel Hill, Overland Park, Jersey City, Williamsburg, and Colleyville. It's all the same hate, just a different guise. Yet for some reason, many who should join forces with us attack us. Fully 1/3 of Jewish students experienced anti-Semitism on campus this past year. At Harvard and Columbia and the University of Vermont, and many other places, again and again. I've heard it from some of our students. And when a Jewish student at SUNY Binghamton named Cassie Blattner established a support group to combat sexual violence against women, she was kicked out of her own group because she professed to be a proud Zionist. She was defending the victim, but was shamed and called a colonizer. That is shameful. Of course, Palestinians deserve basic rights, but we're also indigenous to that land. We are a religion, but we are a people with a proud history and a precious legacy of deeply embedded values of peace and justice to share with the world. Ours is an ennobling voice. How dare anyone try to rob Cassie Blattner of that voice? To tell her that she's not allowed to defend women who have been victimized simply because she stands with proud Jewish women like Hannah Senesh, Golda Meir, or Betty Friedan, who found her way back to Judaism, a Judaism that she had rebelled against. She said, "I hereby affirm my right as a Jewish American feminist to make chicken soup." even though I sometimes take it out of the can. And if anyone wants to mess with Cassie Blattner because she's a proud Zionist, they're going to have to take on Ruth Westheimer first. Before she became what she became, she was a Haganah sniper. All you need to know about Dr. Ruth is that, orphaned after the Holocaust, she moved to Palestine, learned all about life on a kibbutz, where her first love was a boy named Putz. You don't get more Zionist than that. Hey, I just got 7 sermons left. I can let it all hang out. But back to my story about the First Lebanon War. One of Israel's great poets and songwriters, Ehud Manor, was furious about this war. What it did to innocent Palestinians in Sabra and Shatila, but also, more importantly, or at least as important, what it did to the Israeli soldiers themselves, who had to bear the brunt of decisions made by people whom they trusted, whom they were sworn to obey. Those decisions placed those in the midst of a moral quagmire, so he wrote a song. Manor actually had written that song a couple of years earlier as a belated response to the killing of his younger brother in another feudal battle, the War of Attrition, lesser known, right after the Six-Day War, along the Suez Canal between Israel and Egypt. And he later told an interviewer, he said, "For many years I've been walking with a very strong sense of protest, that there was such a callous disregard for human life. They put our soldiers on the line of the canal in front of incessant shelling by the Egyptians, and they stood by as the soldiers helplessly absorbed the blows." So Ehud Manor was very angry at his leaders, but he loved his country. And so he wrote his most beloved song, Ein li eretz acheret. Perhaps you've heard it. Ein li eretz acheret, gam im admati boeret, If you haven't heard it, it's another example of the wide gulf that separates American Jews from Israel. But here's the translation. I have no other country. Even if my land is aflame, just a word of Hebrew pierces my veins and my soul. With a painful body, with a hungry heart, here is my home. I will not stay silent because my country changed her face. I will not give up reminding her and sing in her ears until she will open her eyes. Now, when he died in 2005, the Israeli public voted this Ehud Manor's most popular song. Now, this guy wrote literally over 1,000 songs, so many of them immortal standards and much more optimistic. I mean, he wrote Chai, for God's sake. The winner, Eurovision, Chai, 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 Am Yisrael Chai. You probably have heard it. I hope you have anyway. Anyway, he also, oh my God, he wrote Bishana Haba'ah, the most optimistic, perfect New Year song, hopeful song ever written. Otire, kama tov yeh. If you know it, sing along with me. Otire, kama tov yeh. Shana hashana haba'ah. You will see how good it will be next year, which is hopefully this year. That wasn't his most popular song. Ein li eretz acheret. All fire and flame, not the hopeful nostalgia of Bishana Haba'ah. That is the song he was most loved for. And this song, with its bone-rattling pain and even shame, combined with an unbreakable, almost mystical love for his culture, the language, the soul of his people, the Hebrew language, and his country. This is the song that Israelis call a patriotic standard. No issue about self-criticism for Jews. This song would be banned in a couple of American states, probably. No problem with grappling with the war in Lebanon and its stained history. And that song, it gained power over time. Like so many of our great prayers and great poems, it gained meaning and resonance. It was very powerful during the war in Lebanon. It was more powerful in November of 1995, after the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin. And I brought a group to Madison Square Garden, to the memorial service for Rabin the week after he died. We were in such shock. We did a program here with our whole community. You might remember how full this room was. And they sang this song there. They sang it throughout Israel. And they agonized over how things could go so wrong. The kids, your age, lit candles in the streets. They called them the Candle Generation and sang this song in Israel. In the mid-90s, when our generation here was asking their parents for Beanie Babies and Tickle Me Elmo, they were worried about their beloved country and how such hate could be generated from within for zealots like Yigal Amir, a dark soul who could kill his prime minister to do what he did. And that is the song that Nancy Pelosi brought out twice. First after January 6th, and then again after the Dobbs decision last June. Her favorite Israeli song turns out to be about America too. And now that song, Ein Li Eretz Acheret, unites November 1995 and January 2021 and brings together the war of attrition and the war on abortion. These are the words that could capture the tears of Peres and Pelosi. We have no other country. We will not stay silent when our country has gone astray, and we shall prevail. We will always be proud. It will always be our country, and we will always love it. Am I tempted to abandon America because it is increasingly slouching toward authoritarian rule? Hopefully not. But no way. Because there are people in the country who hate me simply because I'm a Jew? What else is new? I'm not going anywhere. And am I going to give up on Israel, the first homeland the Jews have had in 2,000 years, because Israel too is flirting with anti-democratic leanings and policies? No way. I can't do a wedding, according to some authorities in Israel, although I've done them, because I'm a conservative rabbi. It is still my country. Ein li eretz acheret. Were I Hungarian, I would be angry as heck at what Viktor Orban has done to that country, and I would fight to change it. If I were Turkish or Nicaraguan or maybe now Italian, Russian, oh my God. The courage of that Russian journalist, Marina Osyanikova, who jumped in front of the camera on the news in Moscow to dare to tell the truth. The courage of Iranian women and Russian protesters right now. We Jews, we Americans have it easy by comparison. We need to have the same courage, to be proud and to stand up for the ideals of our country. Be proud to be Jewish. Now, there's an interesting theoretical dialogue. Leonard Cohen, of course, Leonard Cohen, he felt strongly about his connection to the Jewish people. He went to the 73 front, the battlefront in Sinai. It's a great book that just came out about that. But he disagreed with John Lennon's song, Imagine. He didn't like it. He couldn't imagine a world with no religion, with no Jewish people. Leonard Cohen said, only nationalism produces art. The only culture worth anything comes from a loyalty to a language, a group, a place. A world without these differences would be unbearable. David Hartman, philosopher, wrote, "I am a we before I become an I. I surfaces only after it has appropriated fully the sense of we." Now, I think there's room for both Leonard and Leonard. A world where each person and each group can be celebrated for their unique gifts. We can celebrate without having to dominate. We can celebrate ourselves, but only with humility. So power ennobles, but so does humility. That's why I'm proud to be a Jew, not because I can, but because I can't. I can't fix everything. I can't wipe away the tragic events. I can't make my country perfect. It takes hard work to love a nation, to love a people. My ancestor was a wandering Aramean who became a slave in Egypt, the lowest of the low. What people invents a history like that? We began as slaves, and we were delivered unto freedom. And we all stood at Sinai, and we stood together as well at the gates of Auschwitz, and in Munich, and Babi Yar, and Jerusalem. That is the beginning of my story, of our story. At the opening ceremony of this summer's Maccabiah, which I mentioned, got to do that. Popular Israeli singer Hanan Ben-Ari sang one of his favorite recent hits, Cholem Kamo Yosef. And I dream like Joseph. I dream like Joseph. I fight like Deborah. I speak up like Esther, like Moses, like Ruth, like Dr. Ruth. I am all of them. I live at 31 Connolly Strasse, where the Munich Olympic athletes were attacked. I live in Mila 18, the headquarters of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. I am Herzl witnessing the trial of Dreyfus. I sing the Psalms with David. I dream like Joseph. Being Jewish is who we are 24/7. Being Jewish is not what we do from 4 to 6 when we pick up from Hebrew school. Being Jewish is not what you do up until your bar mitzvah, and then see you later. We eat Jewish, we sleep Jewish, we kvetch Jewish, we cry Jewish, we laugh Jewish, we especially laugh Jewish. We ask questions Jewish, and lots of them. We protest Jewish, we care Jewish, we love Jewish. And we do this despite the haters, and in some ways because of them, to defy them, to defeat them. We do Jewish all the more. And although I think I'm the one who invented the term Jewish, I have some bad news. There is no Jewish. If you are half Jewish, or Jewish adjacent, or otherwise ambivalent about your identity, that is precisely what makes you a full-fledged Jew. To be Jew is to be ambivalent. If you had doubts about what it all means, you're a Jew. You can be ambivalent and proud all at the same time, and chew bubblegum too. That's a boomer reference, Google it. Chew gum, not chew ghee. You know, sometimes it's easier to get to know ourselves when we're seen from the perspective of someone on the outside looking in, sort of like de Tocqueville, Mark Twain. I'm very lucky. I get to see that all the time because I work with students for conversion. If every Jew could spend just a half hour talking about Judaism with a Jew by choice, it would change your whole perspective. Just a few weeks ago, a young woman named Ashley became a Jew by choice. She loves everything about being a Jew. When she finished the process, she was glowing. So I asked every candidate to write a little essay. She's a great writer, so here's some of what she wrote. Most people are born into a religion, and that is that. No questioning, no rejection, just blind acceptance. I've been lucky enough to truly experience both Catholicism and Judaism, then make the choice of which is right for me and my future family. While falling in love has been the catalyst for this choice, it is up to me to continue my beliefs And after experiencing the sense of community and positivity I found in Judaism, it is easy for me to actively choose to be Jewish from this point in my life forward. When I first broached the topic of conversion with my family, they naturally had questions. What do Jewish people believe? What holidays do you celebrate? What about Christmas? In answering these questions and more, both my family and I have learned that there are lots of similarities between the way I was raised and what Judaism brings to the table, including a similar moral compass, a focus on family, and striving to be a good person in every facet of life. We also discovered that there are a number of differences, integrating contemporary societal values with religion, room for interpretation of the faith, and innate positivity. Innate positivity. Through these differences, I found that Judaism allows me to focus on some of the most important qualities in myself, me to better my relationship with the world at large. My life is exceedingly different from those of the people who wrote the Torah, but I think it's beautiful that generations of people have been able to glean what they need from a text that was not written with our current circumstances in mind. She continues, I love how Judaism continues to reevaluate and consider views on topics like women's reproductive rights and marriage equality. I find solace in knowing that my religion takes an informed, nuanced stand on modern matters and will always take the time and allow for healthy evaluation and questioning. Did you hear that? Ashley praised Judaism for its innate positivity. And you know what? She's right. I mean, yeah, tell that to my bubby. I mean, yes, we did invent Debbie Downer. Wah, wah. Rachel Dratch. But we are a glass half full religion for a glass half empty people. And she and others like her are helping to fill the other half of the glass. A couple of days ago, Ashley married Evan Gans. And today we welcome them back home to Bethel for the first time as a married couple. Ashley, if you can take a little time out from your honeymoon, I'm wondering if you're free to give the sermon on Yom Kippur. Evan, this one is a keeper. Ashley, so is he. And so, yeah, these are my millennials, my Gen Z, my kids, all right, aside from my real kids, who are also very proud Jews, and I'm extremely proud of them. So I'm not going to claim that everything is perfect in Israel and America, for the Jewish people everywhere. Our two homelands are linked by the same songs, though. Ein li eretz acheret and B'shana haba'ah. The joy and the sadness, the hope and the hopelessness that quickly reverts back to hope. But as we bring in a new year, we hope that this year, Kama tov yiyeh, how good it will be. This is a time when you need to stand tall and proud, to stand as one, saying with an aching body and with a hungry heart, here is my home. And to know three things, al shlosha devarim. One, to be a Jew is ennobling. Two, to be a Jew is humbling. And three, Rabbi will always be here for you. May God bless you and keep you, and may you forever be proud to be a Jew. And meanwhile, get off my lawn. Amen. Otire, kama tov yiyeh, bashana, bashana, haba'ah. Otire, kama tov yiyeh, bashana, bashana, haba'ah. Let's continue with our service. Page 150, back in our Machzors.